This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy to see if you could save when you bundle your home and auto policies. Try it at progressive.com.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states.
All episodes of A Trial by Podcast are for informational and entertainment purposes only. Much to their parents' dismay, neither host is a lawyer, journalist, or investigator. Just two people with microphones and Wi-Fi. All actions discussed are alleged, and all parties are innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. For the full legal mumbo-jumbo, check the show notes.
On February 2nd, 2008, 24-year-old real estate agent Lindsay Buziak was murdered inside a vacant home that she was showing to a couple posing as prospective buyers. Days earlier, a woman with an unplaceable accent had called her out of the blue, claiming that she and her husband urgently needed a $1 million home and they could close within days. Lindsay was excited about the opportunity, but also uneasy enough about the situation to ask her boyfriend, Jason Zailo, to wait nearby during the showing just to make sure everything was okay. Witnesses saw Lindsay take the couple inside the home, but she would not leave it alive. That evening, while Jason waited in his car down the street, and while Lindsay's BlackBerry butt-dialed an old acquaintance, Lindsay was brutally attacked inside the home, stabbed 40 times in the face, neck, and chest, for her body to be found by her boyfriend. Now, nothing was stolen, there was no sexual assault, and there was almost no forensic evidence left behind. And police believed whoever had done this had obviously done it before. To this day, no arrests have ever been made. This is the unsolved murder of Lindsay Buziak. Welcome back to the pod, everyone. I am your host, Kelsey, and today we are closing out the story of the murder of Lindsay Buziak. Now, this is the second part to this case, so if you have not listened to part 1 yet, please go do that first. Otherwise, you're going to be very confused. But for those of you who have already listened to part 1, we're going to kind of review, do a little bit of recap, talk about where we left off, just so we're all refreshed on what is going on in the story. Because we did leave off in a pretty important spot, and I don't want you guys to be like, wait, I forget what happened, and now we feel lost. So we are talking about the unsolved murder of Lindsay Buziak, who was 24 years old when she was murdered. Now, Lindsay was a real estate agent. She was pretty early on in her career, and she actually worked for her boyfriend's mother. So her boyfriend is Jason Zailo, and his mother is Shirley Zailo. Now, Shirley Zailo was kind of like a head honcho at RE/MAX. So she was very well established in the real estate community. She was a great mentor for a new agent to have, and it was kind of like a family affair because Jason Zailo was also involved in the family business. Off the top of my head, I'm trying to think what he did. Oh, he was a mortgage broker in the family business. So Lindsay is working with Jason and Shirley. She's also living with Jason in a home that is owned by Shirley. So she's very entangled in the Zailo family in multiple different regards. Now, Jason and Lindsay really hit it off. They kind of moved very quickly in the beginning of their relationship. They moved in together after just a few months of dating. Obviously, they started working together pretty soon after as well. So it was very exciting, hot and heavy for a while. But by the time of Lindsay's death, or really before her death, by late 2007, Lindsay had quietly started telling friends that she was thinking about maybe leaving this relationship with Jason. But of course, a breakup with Jason is not necessarily as simple as your average breakup. This means, leaving her home that she shares with him, leaving her job, because who wants to work with your ex-boyfriend and his family, leaving her mentor, and just having to rebuild her entire professional life from scratch in this industry that is very heavily based on relationships and referrals. And on top of all of this, she was reportedly pretty stressed about money at the time too, which of course never helps when you are trying to take steps to go out on your own. And we talked about some rockiness behind the scenes. There was the incident described by Lindsay's friend that happened, the friend says, on December 22nd, 2007. This is less than 2 months before Lindsay's murder. And this is when she was having a late night heart-to-heart with her friend in her apartment, thinking that Jason was already asleep in the other room. However, he was not. He was listening, and according to the friend, Jason really reacted badly, so badly that the friend decided to leave the condo on foot, and Lindsay ended up chasing after her. And this is probably a good time for me to do my disclaimer of I am not accusing anyone of being involved in the murder of Lindsay Buziak. I am simply presenting the commonly discussed theories or possibilities about who may be involved. So while we talk about Jason and, there's some rockiness in the relationship, I am trying to kind of tell both sides. This can be spun one way to make Jason, to make it look like Jason's involved, like it can be used for that argument, and it can be spun to show the opposite as well. And I think the other side of this rockiness is, I don't know about you guys, but everyone has a little drama sometimes in their lives and in relationships. Now, whether or not this is an expected or normal level of drama, I think it depends on the person. For me, this seems a little bit much personally, but yeah, just something to know. Now, despite this incident, Lindsay goes on a family ski trip with Jason and his family after that incident occurred. And after she returns, she tells people that she has decided to give the relationship another shot. So it seems like by late January, Lindsay is on board with making this relationship work. Then on January 31st, 2008, Lindsay got a cold call from a woman with an accent that she could not place. An accent that Lindsay actually suspected the woman might have been faking. And this woman said that she and her husband urgently needed a move-in ready home, 3 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms minimum, plus an in-law suite for a live-in nanny. And she said, look, we're coming from across the country for the weekend. We want to see options, and we want to make an offer within the 3 days that we're there. And the best part was her budget was $1 million, which was going to mean a huge commission for Lindsay. Now, Lindsay had asked her, how did you guys hear about me? And this woman actually gave her the name of a real former client of Lindsay's. So Lindsay had reached out to that client trying to thank them for referring her, but that client had been out of town and Lindsay wasn't able to get a hold of her or a hold of them. I'm not sure if it was a male or a female. But with that, Lindsay, moved forward anyway. She found a vacant new build home that had matched their wish list at 1702 De Souza Place. This was in a cul-de-sac that was still under construction. It was in a quiet, upper middle class Saanich neighborhood. Now, the developer, Joe De Souza, was actually a business associate of Shirley Zailo's and had reportedly been on site about an hour before the murder. Some people point to this as suspicious. I think on its own, not really that suspicious, but to each their own. Now, on the evening of February 2nd, Lindsay meets the couple at the house around 5:30 p.m. Now, even though she decided to move forward with this, she did have some reservations. She felt like it was a little bit too good to be true, and she also kind of felt, she felt like the woman was faking that accent, which made her a little bit nervous. So she did ask her boyfriend to come along and just wait outside, just to make sure that everything went okay. So she meets them at the house at 5:30 p.m. Now, Jason had gone and picked up one of his coworkers who he had plans with for that evening. And on the way to their plans, he tells a coworker, hey, we got to go meet my girlfriend at this showing, just make sure everything goes smoothly. So they arrive at the house about 15 minutes after the showing begins, maybe a few minutes earlier than that, but between 5:40, 5:45 p.m. So it's Jason, his coworker named Cohen, and Cohen wasn't one of Jason's best friends. This was kind of a work acquaintance. When they get there, they kind of see a guy through the door. It sounds like through the, front windows. And about 10 minutes or so pass and they feel like, okay, everything seems fine. So Jason didn't want them to come out and be like, why is your boyfriend sitting out on the road waiting for you? He didn't want to make Lindsay look bad. So he says this is why he decided to pull around behind the house. After about 10 more minutes without hearing anything from Lindsay, Jason's starting to get concerned. And they go up to the front door, I believe, first, and it's locked. So this is obviously concerning. Why would the door be locked? They haven't seen anyone go in or out. However, there were witnesses, like third-party witnesses, that saw Lindsay go inside with this couple. So we know that the couple exists and they were there. So he starts to get concerned. He calls the police, and after they do this, they go around to the back and they peek over the fence and they see that the back patio door is open. So Jason lifts Cohen over the fence, kind of gives him a boost from underneath. Cohen goes in the back patio door, walks through the house to the front door, and lets Jason in through the front door. Jason runs up the stairs immediately, which some people argue is suspicious. Some people argue it is not. But Lindsay is found upstairs with about 40 stab wounds. And I was looking into this. It seems like the actual number of stab wounds is not completely clear. This is an estimate because I believe some of these wounds are overlapping, which makes it a little difficult. But the point is there are a lot of wounds, and they are mostly to her head, her face, and her chest. Specifically, it seems like her breasts, which she had recently had breast implants put in. Now, after they find Lindsay, of course, they call 911 again, and this has changed from like a welfare check to now, someone has been murdered here. And it's believed that the couple who had been in the house had exited through the back patio door, and that is why it was left open. Now, no murder weapon was ever recovered. There were no DNA profiles found at the scene. The only fingerprints found at the scene belonged to Jason and Cohen, and these really aligned with their story of, where they were in the house that night. And last week we talked a lot about how strange this case is. Everything about the setup of this case, the fake referral, the vacant house, the total absence of physical evidence, the possible getaway driver, because you have to think this couple, if one or both of them stabbed Lindsay, they would likely be covered in blood. And there are no reports of anyone, seeing people walking around covered in blood. But the possible getaway driver, all of this just seems to suggest a cold, professional, planned down to the smallest detail possible hit, which is really juxtaposed with the actual way in which Lindsay was killed. The 40 or so stab wounds concentrated in those areas, on her face, on her chest. This reads as very personal, very rage-driven. So it's an odd juxtaposition, and it makes you question if this was some sort of hit. Were they instructed to kill her in this way? So where we left off last week was really diving into some of the events in Lindsay and Jason's relationship. So we were talking about that incident on December 22nd where, Jason had overheard Lindsay telling her friend that she might be wanting to leave this relationship. The friend leaves the condo on foot. Lindsay follows her. And according to the friend, Jason then called Lindsay roughly 30 times in a row. Then she goes on the ski trip and she kind of tells people afterwards that she is going to give the relationship another shot. Lindsay had also told her father on a recent trip to visit him in Calgary that, she was thinking about leaving this relationship and leaving Jason. And it seems like things were rocky in this relationship on Lindsay's end. She was always kind of on the cusp of like, should I stay or should I go? Like, do I want to be in this relationship or do I not want to be in this relationship? And she seems to kind of go back and forth a lot trying to figure this out. And I think that's a really, natural thing to do. But what's interesting is when Jason is asked about their relationship, Jason was like, yeah, everything was really great. He told police, quote, there was nothing wrong. Like, I really loved her. Everything was great, end quote. So again, it can just be two different perspectives. Maybe Jason didn't realize the extent to which Lindsay was debating if she wanted to be in this relationship or not. But there does seem to be like competing stories here about what was going on. And a lot of people try to argue that the brutal nature of the killing suggests some sort of, very personal motivation, whether it's rage or jealousy or something like that. Now, despite all of this, Saanich police stated publicly as early as February 2009, about a year after Lindsay's murder, that Jason was no longer a suspect, that he had been cleared of any wrongdoing. And they said their reasoning for clearing him, like what proved it, is that he had this alibi, which I think the timing itself, we don't even have to just trust Cohen. I think the timing makes it pretty impossible for Jason to have been the one who physically did this. But they said they cited his alibi and a lack of any evidence tying him to the crimes. And they said that's what cleared him. And look, I'm going to say it 500 times. I'm not accusing Jason Zailo of being involved in Lindsay's murder or killing her. However, I am taking issue with the fact that the police are saying he has been cleared because of a lack of evidence tying him to the crime. If there was evidence proving that he couldn't have been involved, or there was evidence pointing very clearly to someone else, fine. But a lack of evidence is your evidence that he didn't do it. That makes no sense to me at all. At all. Now, the police have not shared everything that they know about this case. And even especially in 2010, like early on, we know a lot more now than we did even 10 years ago about this case. So maybe they have information that they're not sharing with us that they think is pretty convincing that Jason had nothing to do with this. But the problem is we just have to trust them on that. You're not going to tell us why. So yeah, I just don't think a lack of evidence proves that he didn't do it and that he shouldn't be looked into anymore. Now, in 2010, after renewed media attention pushed this case back into the spotlight, police went even further. Okay, because at first in 2009, they're just like, Jason, we have cleared Jason. Jason is not involved. They went even further in 2010 and said that they have cleared the entire Zailo family. So Shirley, Jason, and Jason's brother, Ryan, saying that all three had voluntarily met with detectives and satisfied every request that was made of them. And again, not pointing at the family, not accusing them of doing this. It just doesn't make sense to me that we're saying they have been cleared. And we know that they didn't do this because there's no evidence showing that they did it and because they've been super, cooperative. Now, maybe it's possible police are just like saying this because they are being harassed. Like this family is being harassed by the public still to this day. So maybe they're just trying to alleviate that, but they're not really actually not looking into them. Maybe they're like, we don't have any evidence pointing to them, but if any comes our way, we're not going to ignore it. Who knows what the case is? But I just don't think we can say for certain that they were not involved in this. I don't think we can say for certain that any specific person is not involved in this. Because I do think it sounds like this was a hit. So even if someone's got an alibi, I think there's still a possibility. And I'm not saying that we should pursue them specifically, but we should be open to any and all possibilities. Now, at some point after the murder, Lindsay's best friend, Nikki, got an early morning call from a woman with a strange accent that woke her out of a dead sleep. She could not make out what the caller was saying, and then all of a sudden, the line went dead. And because she knew that Lindsay had described the woman from the showing as having this strange, unidentifiable accent, this had Nikki, she was shaken by this. She started calling the number back. And she was not dialing anything else in between. It took her 20 to 30 tries before she got an answer. But when she did get an answer, the voice on the other end of the line belonged to Shirley Zailo. Now, as far as I know, Shirley Zailo does not have an accent. Or if she does, it's never mentioned in any reporting. So why did the person have an accent? According to Nikki, as reported by Someone Saw Something Canada, Shirley's explanation for this that she gave to Nikki over the phone was that her secretary is also named Nikki and that she must have mixed up the calls and called the wrong Nikki. However, Nikki's confused why Shirley would even have her phone number saved in her phone. Shirley said that Jason must have been the one who put Nikki's phone number in Shirley's phone. But Nikki says she doesn't remember ever giving Jason her phone number in the first place. Maybe it's possible that Lindsay had given it to him for some reason, but she says she did not. Now, Shirley has since denied that this phone call ever happened at all, but the friend maintains that it did. Now, I read this claim on the website, someonesawsomething.ca, and it hasn't been addressed on the record by the Saanich police from what I could find. So it's unclear to me who Nikki reported this to, if she reported it to the police and then she's also telling people in interviews, or if the police investigated this, none of that is clear to me. But what I will say is if this call happened, this is really fucking weird. And it's it makes you think, okay, well, Shirley's, if this call is true and it happened the way that Nikki says it happened or remembers it happening, it makes me be like, well, is Shirley involved? But why would she be calling, if you were guilty, why would you be calling Lindsay's friend from your own phone number without blocking it and using a fake accent and whatever. It just seems like I can't see what the purpose behind that would be. But it is interesting to me that, Nikki says this happened. She says she talked to Shirley. Shirley explained the situation, and Shirley is saying, nope, this didn't happen at all. We are officially in the dog days of summer, which when you were a kid, that meant a lot of freedom. No school, no teachers, no homework, no nothing. But as an adult, that freedom is taken away from us, ripped from our hands, shred by shreds as we beg for it back. Meanwhile, it's 95 degrees out, and you're probably just dying for one day of freedom and a nice cold summer cocktail. Maybe a mojito, maybe a margarita if you're feeling spicy. But who could afford it in this economy? Especially when Big Wireless is charging you an arm and a leg for your wireless service. That's why summer is the perfect time to switch to Mint Mobile. With their summer sale, you can spend just $15 a month for high-speed data and coverage on the T-Mobile 5G network. Mint Mobile took what's wrong with wireless and made it right with premium wireless for just $15 a month, so you can free up those dollars for something a little more fun. All plans come with high-speed data, unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. So stop spending on wireless and spend on margaritas, if you so choose. Go to mintmobile.com/a-trial-by-podcast to switch. That's mintmobile.com/a-trial-by-podcast. Upfront payment of $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12 months. Plan required, $15 per month equivalent. Taxes and fees extra. Initial plan term only. Greater than 50 gigabytes may slow when network is busy. Includes up to 20 gigabytes hotspot. Capable device required. Availability, speed, and coverage varies. See mintmobile.com. It's that time of year where everyone is coming over. Cookouts, get-togethers, and people asking for water with ice. And I actually deeply care about what I'm handing my guests. I'm trying not to Julia Tofana anyone. If you know, you know. And that's the thing. I just moved into a new place. The tap water looks perfectly fine, smells perfectly fine, looks crystal clear. But that's the thing is, looks can be deceiving. Your water might look completely fine straight out of the tap, like crystal clear. But 3 out of 4 U.S. homes have toxic chemicals in their tap water. And guess what? You're not going to 3 out of 4 U.S. homes and seeing water that looks funky. It just looks like water. But just like Aqua Tofana, there are things in there that you can't see, smell, or taste. Your standard fridge filter or pitcher filter isn't catching most of them. So this summer, I've been running everything through AquaTrue. It sits right on my counter. There's no plumbing. There's no installation. You just have to plug it in and go. It's tested and certified to remove 84 contaminants using its patented 4-stage reverse osmosis system. So when someone asks for a glass of water at my new place, I feel good handing it to them. So if you're ready to make the switch, head to aquatrue.com and use promo code ATRIALBYPODCAST for 20% off your purifier. That's AquaTrue, AQUATRU.com. Promo code ATRIALBYPODCAST for 20% off.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy to see if you could save when you bundle your home and auto policies. Try it at Progressive.com.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states.
Now, in December of 2007, Lindsay had visited her father in Calgary, and she told him that she was unhappy in her relationship during this trip. She said that she was planning to leave Jason once certain deals closed, and that she missed her old relationship with Matt. Now, whether or not she's saying she wants to get back together with Matt, I don't know that that's the case. I think she's just saying that, her relationship with Matt was better and she wants something, more similar to that. Maybe she was saying she wanted to get back together with Matt. I just don't know. But this story that her father says, it aligns with the story her best friend gave about the December 22nd incident where Jason overheard her say this to the friend late at night. This is around the same time frame. So Lindsay's telling her dad the same thing she was telling her friend. Now, during that same visit, Lindsay also told her dad something that would become very important after Lindsay's murder. She told him cryptically that she had seen something she shouldn't have, that it was really bad, and that she couldn't explain more, but she would explain it at some point later on. But she never got the chance. Guys, if something really bad ever happens, I beg of you, tell somebody. Tell somebody, because we don't know, this could be the answer. This could hold the answer to who did this to her, and not criticizing Lindsay in any way, shape, or form. I'm sure there was a reason behind not explaining this. It's just so sad and so ominous. Now, according to the Times columnist, while Lindsay was visiting Jeff in Calgary, she also separately reached out to an old high school friend named Erickson Dalal Khazar. She had contacted him once by phone, like made a phone call, and once over Facebook. Now, we know this, but we do not know what was said. I don't think police know the contents of the phone call. They probably know, like, if it was a Facebook message, they probably have that message, but they haven't released, like, what that message has said to the public, or at least I haven't seen it reported anywhere. Now, this old friend, Delo Kazar, that's a tough name, cool name, but tough name. He was allegedly well, I guess not really allegedly, because he does go to jail for this shit. But whatever. He was a mid-level drug dealer. I don't think he's going to sue me for saying that. And he turned out to be involved in a massive cocaine trafficking ring. Now, it is not clear why Lindsay was contacting him. This was not someone she like kept in touch with as far as anyone knew. It's not like there were messages going back forever between them. It's not someone she was particularly close with in high school. It was just like an acquaintance from high school, you know? Now, that begs the question of, okay, well, why was she reaching out to this drug dealer that she wasn't really friends with? Was it to buy drugs? From all accounts, there is no one out there that says Lindsay ever did drugs. It sounds like that was probably not the reason for Lindsay calling. And as far as I know, well, I know for certain that Erickson lived in the Victoria area, which is literally across the country from Calgary, where she was visiting her father. So if she's contacting him while she's in Calgary, I don't really think it's to buy drugs because he's on the other side of the country. So why was she contacting him? We don't know. And you're kind of like, well, this seems like a little bit of a red herring in this story, but this becomes very important. And this becomes what I believe police's leading theory is. They have not specifically said that, but that's my impression from their interviews. But a few months before Lindsay's murder, in November of 2007, an informant had tipped off Calgary police to a cocaine shipment moving from British Columbia into Alberta, which triggered a joint Calgary police and RCMP investigation nicknamed Operation High Noon. Wait, so now I'm confusing myself because, spoiler alert, he's involved in this drug trafficking ring in Calgary, but I read that he lived in Victoria. All right, well, maybe he lived in Calgary, guys. I'm really sorry. Let me fact check this. All right. I am back with the fact checking. I apologize, guys. Sometimes there is so much reporting, there are mistakes. And I'm going to leave this in because I think it highlights, I do my best to, use good sources to confirm the facts and do everything right and not misconstrue things. But sometimes mistakes are made by everyone, and I make mistakes. So that's why we've got that legal disclaimer. I'm not a professional. And I always advise you guys, don't just listen to our episodes and just agree with my opinion. Don't just listen to someone else's episode on a case and agree with their opinion. Do your own research and look into these things. I will always do everything I can to give you the most unbiased view of the story. I may insert my opinion, but I am always very clear that that's just my opinion. But not everybody does that. We talked about in the JonBenet Ramsey episodes, the CBS documentary about JonBenet Ramsey, the one that they did about Lacey Peterson's case. They're very, very one-sided. And they are trying to convince you of one side. And they are leaving things out purposefully and all of these different things. So, I try to be unbiased. I think I'm trustworthy. I hope you trust me. But sometimes I make mistakes. And if there are errors in stuff, it's a mistake on my part. But I'm just saying, not everyone in the true crime world is. Some people are trying to go into it with an agenda, okay? But here's what I found. Still unclear to me where he lived long term. However, it does sound like he was back and forth. So it is possible that when Lindsay was calling him while she was in Calgary, she was calling him because she knew he was in Calgary. And again, this is an old high school friend, so maybe she's just calling him to meet up while she's in town. We don't know for certain. I couldn't find anything during my fact checking of did they actually meet up and spend time together? Do we know that for certain or what? But it is possible, and maybe just people don't know. Again, the question becomes, was she buying drugs from him? I don't know. I don't think she was because I think her friends know that, she was murdered. And if this might have had something to do with Lindsay doing drugs, I think her friends would probably be like, yeah, we've seen Lindsay do cocaine before. But they're very adamant Not a single person says that Lindsay did cocaine. They said specifically she did not do drugs. So I'm pretty inclined to believe them. I don't think she was calling him for drugs. I think if she was calling him to meet up, it was just like, oh, old high school buddies out here. Like, let's, go grab dinner or something. Again, unclear whether they did meet up or the contents of, their discussions, anything like that. But let's get to why this is all really important. It is because an informant tipped off Calgary police to a cocaine shipment moving from British Columbia into Alberta, which triggered a joint Calgary police and RCMP investigation nicknamed Operation High Noon. So on January 22nd, 2008, just 10 days before Lindsay's murder, police arrested Delacazar in the first wave of that operation. Delacazar was denied bail on February 1st, which was the day before Lindsay was killed. So the theory is not that Delacazar killed Lindsay, like went over there and was the man and killed Lindsay. But the theory is that this drug bust, which at the time was the biggest drug bust in Canadian history, I believe, that this drug bust was the motive for Lindsay's murder. Now, the reported scope of that bust, it varies kind of depending on who's telling it, and I also think just on some of the timing of the reporting. CBC's reporting describes around 80 kilograms of cocaine seized over the life of the investigation and more than a dozen people charged in this bust. Other accounts put it at about 14 people arrested and about 67 kilograms of cocaine, roughly $2.227 million in cash, plus weapons and vehicles rigged with hidden compartments for transporting drugs. So while these numbers are a little bit wishy-washy, the point is that some big-time drug dealers lost millions of dollars in cash, in drugs, in weapons, in vehicles because of this bust. According to Sergeant Horsley from the Saanich Police Department, he tells True Crime News, quote, "What we can say is that people lost a lot of money, and the people that lost the drugs know that someone spoke to the police. A witch hunt occurred where people were being questioned. People were being pulled out of their beds in the middle of the night and asked, 'Who have you spoken to?' Because they know someone spoke to the police," end quote. And so the question is here, was Lindsay killed by this drug cartel because they suspected her of being the informant? And if so, was she the informant? Did she meet up with Erickson? That is so funny that I had made that mistake because I was like, well, why would they think she was the informant if he was in Victoria and she was in Calgary when she called him? This is all making a lot more sense to me now. But this makes me question, did she call Erickson while she was there? Did they meet up? Did she see something while she was with him? Did he tell her something that she reported? Or maybe she saw something and she wasn't the informant who reported it, but they knew that she saw or was told something that she shouldn't have known. And remember, she told her dad that she saw something she shouldn't have. Now, I don't know that she specified that it happened while she was in Calgary, but that's the question is this what she saw? Was something to do with this huge trafficking ring? And unfortunately, we don't know the answers to these questions. And while police probably know whether or not she was the actual informant, this doesn't seem to be something that they're revealing to the public. I don't know how this tip was given. I don't know if, maybe someone called anonymously from a payphone and didn't give their name and then never said anything. I have no idea. I would assume police probably know who the informant is and know whether or not it was Lindsay. But if they do know, it's not something that we know as well. Now, what every source agrees on about this without exception is, again, Lindsay had nothing to do with drugs. She's not suspected of selling drugs or anything like that or being involved in this cocaine trafficking ring. By all accounts, she never used drugs. This has been investigated thoroughly and ruled out everywhere it's been raised. So the question isn't, was she involved in this drug trafficking thing? It's, did she see something? Did she get too close to someone else's mess? And I think there's also a practical argument in this theory's favor that is worth highlighting. The level of coordination that was involved in Lindsay's murder. It does kind of seem like a hit. There is a burner phone. The phone that was used to call Lindsay by the woman to, make this showing appointment, it had been purchased months before Lindsay's murder. But it was never used until the day the woman called Lindsay. And it was only used after that to call Lindsay. Like, it was never used to call any other phone numbers or communicate with anyone except for Lindsay. And at first I was like, well, man, did they plan this months in advance? But, if this is a big drug cartel, it could make sense that they've just got a stock of burner phones and they pull it out for one specific purpose. And when they're done with that purpose, they get rid of it. And so maybe they had purchased it months before and now they know they want to kill Lindsay or this supposed informant, and they pull out one of their burner phones. It also really seems like the people who did this, the couple, they've done this before. They did a really good job of not leaving any evidence. This was very thoroughly planned to every detail. Who commits a lot of murders and hits? Drug cartels. What doesn't fit this theory, in my opinion, is the way Lindsay was killed, the wounds. I would think a drug cartel, you would just go shoot somebody. That's I feel like the easiest, quickest way to do this. I mean, I guess maybe they don't want to leave behind a bullet that could be led back to them. Who knows? But 40 stab wounds seems personal. And if this is just about her being the informant, these wounds to the face and to the chest after she had that breast augmentation, that doesn't really fit to me with this being motivated by her possibly being this informant that lost them millions of dollars. I mean, I don't know. Maybe someone's so mad they're like, whoever orders this hit from the drug cartels gives these instructions to do it in a very heinous way. But I don't know. That just doesn't make sense to me. It really does throw me off when it comes to this theory. Again, not impossible. It just feels it would be unusual for a murder committed because of this motive to have this type of actual carry out. Now, the second theory, and this kind of has different parts to it, different options, but overall I'm calling this the second theory. The second theory is that the Zailo family in some regard was responsible for what happened to Lindsay. And again, I want to be very clear that the police have officially cleared the entire Zailo family of any wrongdoing, and I am not accusing them of involvement in Lindsay's murder. However, there are a lot of people who believe they are involved, so it is worth discussing these theories against the facts of the crime. There are also a lot of open questions that involve the Zailo family, and I think it's worth highlighting them and exploring them. And like I said, while I am not accusing the Zailo family, I am also not defending the Zailo family. And I do think we can't say that they weren't involved because there's not enough evidence linking them to the crime. If that's the case, then no one's involved in this crime. No one committed it because there's not enough evidence linking anyone to the crime right now because we don't have the evidence yet. So an absence of evidence isn't an evidence of innocence. So that's all I'll say. Again, not accusing them. I'm just saying I don't think we can fully rule anyone out of this crime. Now, like I said, there's different versions of these theories involving the Zailo family. It seems pretty clear that Jason did not commit this murder with his own hands. He was not that man. He didn't fit the description. The witnesses saw them shaking hands. Cohen was with him. The timeline doesn't add up. All of these different things. So really, when it comes to Jason, the theory that people have is that he hired this couple to kill Lindsay. They suggest that Jason maybe caught wind that Lindsay wanted to leave him and that she was serious about it this time. And, also she got that breast augmentation. Maybe that really upset him, especially now that she's going to leave. And so he hires this couple to kill her and he gives them the instructions to do it in this very heinous, very rage-filled and very personal way that is destroying some of Lindsay's beauty. And I want to dive into this for a minute because Cohen, again, I think it's impossible that Jason did this himself, but I also think that there are a lot of things where if you did want to take Lindsay's life, the Zailo family did have a lot of information that would be helpful to them in order to do this. Now, with that being said, Lindsay's family had a lot of information that would be helpful if they wanted to do this. Lindsay's friends. So I'm not saying that means they did it, but they were in the real estate industry. They would know, if they wanted to do this in a vacant home that was kind of away from where a ton of people lived, they would know they would want a new build neighborhood. They would know what to put on the wish list to, get Lindsay to choose a house like that. They would know that saying, oh, we want $1 million house and we want it this weekend and we want to make an offer would be too good of an opportunity to pass up. Now, a lot of there's tons of other people besides the Zailo family that could know all of these things. But it's just something to note. You could also note, and some people do online, that Cohen being with Jason was very convenient. Why did Jason need someone to go with him to check on Lindsay? Why did Jason reach out to someone that he wasn't really good friends with? Like, they didn't really hang out outside of work, it sounds like. So did Jason ask Cohen to hang out because he knew he couldn't bring someone with him who was a really close friend or family member? Because then the alibi is not as believable, because this person might lie for Jason. So did Jason decide, okay, I have to have someone with me, because if I'm just by myself, they're going to think I did it. Because he doesn't know that there's going to be witnesses seeing Lindsay go inside with this couple. He's like, oh, I need to make sure someone is with me the whole time so they know that I didn't do it. And it has to be someone that the police don't think would lie for me. So you could say it's very convenient Cohen was with him. Was this very well planned out? That's what people question online. I don't know the answers to those questions. And I don't think that's evidence that he did it, but that's the argument. Now, other people theorize that it wasn't just Jason involved. It was Jason and his mother, Shirley, who hired these people. And there's like another version where it's like, oh, Jason wasn't involved. It was just Shirley who did this because she's this controlling mother and blah, blah, blah. I'm combining those options into one. I feel like they kind of have the same backbone of the theory. It's either Shirley was involved or not. And so the question is, well, why would Shirley want Lindsay dead? Well, the people who hold this theory, they say that the Remax Camison office was involved in some kind of undisclosed financial wrongdoing. Maybe there was some sort of mortgage fraud, some sort of embezzlement, money laundering tied to drug proceeds, something that they were doing that was illegal, and Shirley was allegedly involved in this. And they say that maybe Lindsay was killed because she had seen something she shouldn't have. She had found out about this illegal activity. This was the straw that was making her want to finally leave this relationship and leave the company, ditch Shirley as her mentor. And maybe that was why she was killed, because she saw something she shouldn't have, like she told her dad in Calgary. People who hold this theory point to the fact that whoever set this up clearly understood real estate scheduling and language. And they argue that this all points to someone inside the industry rather than outside a criminal network. This drug trafficking ring wouldn't have all this knowledge about the real estate industry and how it all works. And it's like this theory, if you just think about what I just told you, you're like, okay, that kind of makes sense as a theory, but there's no evidence of any of this financial wrongdoing. Not that I read, from mortgage fraud, no embezzlement, nothing that I could find. Maybe there's rumors out there about it. Maybe there were rumors in the town at the time. I'm not sure really where that comes from, but there's not evidence of it. Shirley's never arrested for any sort of financial crime or anything like that. And it also makes me question if they're just trying to get rid of Lindsay because she knows too much. Again, why these types of wounds? Now, in February 2023, Victoria's Capital Daily published a long investigative piece examining exactly how internet true crime culture has reshaped the public's understanding of this case. The article points out that Jason and the Zailo family, again, have been reportedly cast as suspects across more than a decade of amateur and even mainstream coverage, despite the fact that Saanich police state as early as 2009 that Jason was not involved, and as early as 2010 that the entire Zailo family was not involved. Now, Shirley Zailo was interviewed for the piece, and she described the ongoing suspicion as something she can't escape, like being trapped inside a movie she's already watched. The article situates the case inside, this familiar true crime trope. The boyfriend or his family did it. And it argues that repeated, largely unchallenged coverage has helped calcify this narrative that has outrun the actual evidence. And what I want to say is, if the Zailo family has nothing to do with this, I feel very sorry for them. If they are in no way involved, and Jason Zailo is innocent and he found his girlfriend with 40 stab wounds, a woman that he, by all accounts really loved, whether he treated her properly is debated, but, everyone says he adored Lindsay. That is absolutely horrific to then be accused of being the ones responsible for this. And if they are innocent, I feel for them. And I understand the point of this piece. The point is that there are people who have already condemned Jason and or the Zailos as guilty, as the ones responsible for killing Lindsay. And while I'm not saying they're innocent and didn't do this, I don't think we have nearly enough evidence to say that they did do it or that they were involved. Not with any certainty, at least. I think we should be discussing them, and that's why I'm discussing them here. I think there are question marks. I think it is possible that Jason, or maybe even more of them, are involved, but I don't even know. But yeah, I don't know. I think there's a lot of possibility with the other theory about the drug trafficking ring. But where I take issue with the way the Zailo family has been treated in this case is, again, if they're innocent, this is really horrific for them. And I don't want to add to that if they are innocent, if they are in no way involved. However, I take major issue with the police being like, we have cleared them of all wrongdoing. There is not enough evidence to do that. There's so many unanswered questions. And like I've said 500 times, maybe the police have more info than we do. Maybe they have good reasoning for that. But again, that comes with, we just have to trust them on that. And I don't have that much trust or faith. I think it's especially hard to trust that they're doing their due diligence when you know some of the missteps that they have taken in this case. And I'm not even like accusing the police of, I don't think they're like protecting the Zailo family and they know that they did it. I think the police truly believe that the Zailo family is not involved, or they have no idea. And the Zailo family is getting, so much shit from the community and everything that they're just trying to stop that from happening, but they are still looking into them. I don't know. But I just don't think it's true that we know for a fact that they were not involved. And so I'm going to talk about some missteps they took. I'm not accusing them of doing any of these things on purpose. I'm not accusing them of like covering shit up. I'm not accusing them of like whatever. These may have well just been mistakes. But again, it's like, well, when mistakes are made, it makes me question the due diligence being done. So the day before Lindsay's murder, 7 Saanich police officers retired. Several of these officers were like the most experienced investigators in the department. One of these veteran officers that had relevant experience like investigating murders reportedly offered to come back and help once this case broke open and said, okay, do you need me to come back and help with this? Because I've got a lot of experience. But he was turned down. Saanich Police also initially declined to join the Vancouver Island Integrated Major Crime Unit, a multi-agency body for exactly this kind of case. And they said, no, we can handle this on our own. We're fine. We don't need your guys' help. And according to Morbid's reporting, because I couldn't find where they got this information, so this is according to Morbid, once they eventually did join that unit, because eventually they do bring in the major crime unit and they are having, other agencies help them on this case, they join that unit, but still they hold on to the original Buziak files for years. Ultimately, they were sharing only reviewed or secondhand material. And so it sounds like, according to Morbid's reporting, they were withholding the documents. They were only giving them pieces and parts of information instead of just handing over all of the case files for everyone to review them together, for everyone to have access to them, everyone who's working on this case. And I'm like, why? Again, I'm going to say that's allegedly because I couldn't find the primary source for that. But if that's true, why? What would your motivation be for withholding information from a fellow law enforcement agency? Like, I'm not talking about releasing all these files to the public. I'm talking about giving them to the people who are supposed to be helping you investigate this case because you haven't been able to solve it. Why would you not give them all the information? Again, not accusing them of doing anything illegal, committing any crimes, blah, blah, but what was in, it seems like there's something in there that you didn't want them to know. Like, is that the case? Did someone make a major mistake in the investigation and you don't want the major crime unit to uncover it? Did you break protocol? Did you do something wrong on purpose? Did you commit a crime? Again, not accusing, just asking. Did you want to hoard the information because you wanted to be the one to solve this case and you didn't want it to be like, oh, Saanich Police weren't able to do it. They had to bring in the major crimes unit. So maybe if we keep more of the information, we can get the credit for it. I don't know. I don't know what their motivations would be for this. But I just don't see any good reason for not sharing all of the information with the law enforcement body that has been brought on to help you with this case. Maybe it's just there's so many files that you are only sharing summaries of all of this information at first, unless otherwise requested for more information. I don't know. I don't know how this works. Could be a perfectly fine reason behind it. I just want you to tell me what it is. I don't want to have to just trust you. I want you to tell me what it is. Now, in 2010, Dateline NBC's episode on this case called Dream House Mystery aired. And in the episode, Saanich investigators appeared on camera and they pointed again toward the Calgary drug bust angle. Again, I get the impression that they believe that this is what happened to Lindsay. Public reaction to the episode reportedly buried the Zailo family in suspicion, despite the fact that the police were on there kind of being like, we kind of think that it was related to this drug bust. In 2017, someone left a comment on Jeff Buziak's website that he keeps about the case called LindsayBuziakMurder.com. And this person claimed a responsibility for the murder and taunted police. Now, Jeff Buziak reported this comment immediately to the lead detective and to Victoria Police, but its authenticity was never confirmed and no arrest followed. In May of 2019, Jeff appeared on Dr. Phil to appeal for any information about the case and to talk about what he sees as years of police mishandling. Now, according to Jeff, and this is not just what he says on Dr. Phil, I've just kind of accumulated what I've seen Jeff say about the police. His core criticisms are that the police have really lacked transparency. He feels very shut out of his own daughter's case, and he says that, quote, the police have not been forthright with information or even what they're doing or suspects or anything, end quote. He also says that he doesn't believe they are following up on all of the tips that he passes along to them. He says that he regularly sends people with potential information to the police, but they never are followed up with. Like, the police never reach out and contact those leads. He also says that he is suspicious of police and that he believes there may be an active cover-up. He said outright that police are, quote, hiding something or someone or covering up, end quote. And even more bluntly, per the Times columnist, he said that he thinks they're, quote, either totally blundering idiots or they're covering something up, end quote. I also mentioned the website that he has, which is LindsayBuziakMurder.com. And he said that he has been asked by police to take down this investigative site because they felt that it could jeopardize the integrity of the case. But he believes that this is more so the police protecting themselves rather than actually protecting the investigation. That's his opinion on it. And just overall, he basically tells Dr. Phil that the police are generally incompetent. Now, the Saanich police have kind of responded to some of these claims. And in particular, Sergeant Chris Horsley has said that Jeff's opinions are shaped by, quote, things out there on social media, internet, websites, and blogs, end quote. And he believes that, these things are largely untrue. And he's like, look, if we had enough evidence to seek charges or say who did this, we would have done so. And look, I get it. There's a lot of bullshit out there online. So I get that some of these tips that may be coming in are ridiculous and not even worth looking into. However, not everything out there is bullshit. And if you're an investigator, I personally think that you should be utilizing online culture. You should be utilizing social media conversations, Reddit boards, all of these things as tools to aid you in your investigation. Now, I'm not saying that they should just read a Reddit blog and be like, oh, they say so-and-so did this, let's go arrest them. I'm just saying you don't know who's posting these things. Maybe it's someone who was involved with this drug trafficking ring and they actually know something, but they don't want to come out and say it because they're scared that they're going to get killed. So they're putting it online anonymously, being like, well, maybe X, Y, and Z, or I heard this from this person, whatever it may be. I'm just saying, like, we can't just write it all off as bullshit. Not without looking into it. Some of it you can write off as bullshit immediately, I'm sure, but not all of it. Now, police have also stated that there was an internal audit done on this investigation, and the audit found that the investigation meets standard requirements for major cases. And they said that this audit has also been subject to outside review by the RCMP's Office of Investigational Standards and Practices, which has approved of their process. There have also been online petitions made saying that they want the Saanich police to be removed from this case entirely and handed to another agency. Now, I don't think that Jeff started this himself. I think it was like just random people online who are invested in the case. And while I don't know if that's like completely if the police are really fucking it up that bad, it's also like, well, at this point, could it really hurt? Could it really hurt for another department to take over and take a look at this? I almost feel like it could only help, even if they're not completely fucking it up. Sometimes just getting a fresh set of eyes on things, who knows? Now, there's also been a lot of criticism of Jeff Buziak himself. And I want to go into this not to further criticize Jeff or even to like affirm his things, but I think it's a topic of conversation in this case. So I think I should talk about it because other people talk about it. And I just think it's part of this case. So like I said, Jeff has that website. He has posted names and addresses that he associates with organized crime on his own website. And, people have warned him that this is dangerous, but his response to that is really, I don't care. I want to know what happened to my daughter. And I think that just goes to show how far Jeff and, the Buziak family have gone to keep this case alive, to keep tips coming in, to keep this in the media. In one interview with True Crime Daily, Jeff talks about how in casual conversation, you might ask someone like, what would you do if someone like killed your child or whatever? And he says, most people's reaction is usually something along the lines of, oh, I'd kill that person. I would kill them. And Jeff tells the interviewer in this interview that he is capable of doing just that, and that he thinks most parents are if it came down to it. Now, I don't know if Jeff is threatening to kill whoever did this. I am not supporting. You guys know I am not a fan of vigilante justice. I think it's dangerous to support it, even when someone is in the right, even when it is well-deserved, because it is always opinion based and some people have bad opinions. So not supporting this, but the point I want to make about this is people in some reporting, like they talk about Jeff like he's this crazed lunatic. And it's comments like this about, I could be capable of killing the person who killed my daughter. It's comments like this that I think got him this reputation. It's him posting literally like the names and addresses of members of organized crime on his website that got him that reputation. And people are like, he's lost it. He's insane. But what I want to say is I think Jeff's reaction to his daughter's murder, brutal, heinous murder, and his subsequent behavior, in my mind, it's almost the opposite of lunacy. Like someone stabbed his baby girl 40 times in the face and the chest. And the people who did this are just walking free. And there's multiple people involved, at least 2 involved. And they're just out there walking free. And so I feel like we want Jeff to operate within the boundaries of, social norms. But this is not a normal situation. I almost think it would be insane not to push social boundaries when you're talking about the murder of your daughter. And there are plenty of parents of murdered children or, family members of victims who, are very reserved and conservative and poised. And I'm not saying that's bad or something's wrong with that. I'm just saying that I don't think Jeff is a fucking lunatic for pushing boundaries in the wake of his daughter's murder. I think that this is a very abnormal situation, and expecting someone to just have normal standard behavior is unreasonable to a certain extent. Now, if Jeff goes and kills somebody because he thinks they were involved, that's different. I don't think he's going to do that. I think he is going on these interviews to get information, to intimidate the people who were involved in this. And I think he is doing anything to find out who killed his daughter, even if it puts himself in danger, even if it pisses people off, even if it makes people uncomfortable, even if it makes people think he's crazy. And I just have to say, I don't think that makes him crazy. I think this is a very understandable way to behave in the wake of your daughter's murder. And when you watch his interviews, because I've heard about Jeff, heard other people talk about him, read reporting about him, and I kind of expected him to come off as a lunatic, just the way people talk about him. But like I've watched a couple interviews with him, and I didn't watch the Dr. Phil one. I just read about that like in reporting, but I watched one with True Crime Daily, and like he doesn't come up. He's very poised. He's articulate. He is very brash, very direct. Like this is when the interview where he makes the statement about like, you know, I think I could be capable of killing the person who did this to my daughter. So yeah, like, is that a really extreme statement? Yes. Do I hope he does not mean he is going to kill them if he gets the opportunity? Yeah, I hope that's not what he actually means. But I don't think he's crazy at all. I think he is in agony, and I think his reflavor, oh my God, his behavior appropriately reflects the agony he is in. He's desperate to find out what happened to his daughter. Now, I'm not saying I haven't watched every interview he's ever given. I don't know every word he's ever said and everything he's ever done. I'm not saying this man hasn't maybe done some things that are wrong or that we shouldn't do, or, you know, hasn't said some things that he shouldn't have said or whatever. I'm just saying I don't think it's crazy to act and speak outside of social norms when your daughter has been brutally murdered. I think that's a sane and natural reaction to an insane, unimaginable circumstance. So that is my TED Talk on that. Now, with all of that being said, a lot of information about this case is shared by Jeff himself. And we do need to keep in mind that just because he is Lindsay's father and is very close to the case doesn't mean that every word he says is immediately fact about the case. And I'm not saying I think he's lying about anything or making anything up. Why would he? He has no reason to lie. He wants the truth out of this. I just mean that I think he's sharing each and every scrap of information he gets because you don't know what is going to break the case open. So just because he shares a tip or something doesn't mean that tip is necessarily real. Maybe someone's lying to him, giving him bad information. I'm just saying I think we should leave Jeff alone a little bit. Now, in 2022, Dateline came back to the case with Secrets Uncovered, so like a new episode about the case. And this was kind of like a shifted storyline, and they do really stress in this that Jason had been investigated and cleared, and the man and woman who met Lindsay that evening remain unidentified. Now, on February 1st, 2021, the eve of the 13th anniversary of Lindsay's death, Saanich police announced a new task force taking a fresh look at the case with help from both the FBI and the RCMP. Hell yeah, brother. That's what I'm talking about. That's what needs to happen here. Police cited advances in forensic DNA technology and genetic genealogy as the reason for this new task force, saying that evidence and digital material from the original scene were being reviewed and retested. Now, this had me confused when I read it, because like the DNA technology and genetic genealogy, because I'm like, wait, they said there was no DNA found at the scene. So I don't get it. Like, was that a lie? Were they just withholding information? But I think the point is that while they didn't find DNA profiles in the original investigation, they still collected evidence looking for them. And so I think they're thinking that this new technology may be able to find DNA profiles that weren't detected with older technology. Now, what it is when it comes to the digital material from the original scene, we don't really know. Like, they said that they're going to be reviewing digital evidence, but they have not said like what that is. So could that be Lindsay's phone? Could that be the text messages sent between Lindsay and Jason? Could it be the timing of the lockbox being open? Could it be the timing of the security camera that saw Jason? I don't know what the digital evidence is, but hopefully we will find out. They also said, when they basically did this big announcement of the task force, that they strongly believe that people in the Victoria community know something, that there are people out there who were not directly responsible for this crime that know who is. And they're hoping that whatever loyalty or fear that is stopping them from coming forward or had stopped them since 2008, maybe it doesn't still apply. Maybe they've gotten away from that person they're scared of, or someone has died, or whatever it may be. But since that initial announcement in 2021, like this announcement of this reinvigorated investigation, Saanich police haven't shared any specific updates. They've basically just said that the investigation is ongoing, and whenever they get new questions, they kind of point any media inquiries back to that same 2021 statement that they released. Now, as of today, Jeff and Evelyn Buziak, Lindsay's mother, they have led an annual walk for justice every year since 2008, retracing a path from Lindsay's grave to the crime scene to Sainich's Municipal Hall. Evelyn continues to make public appeals as well, though she is not as active as Jeff in the media. And that is not to say that she is not doing enough by any means. She is doing her part to keep her daughter's story out there. But, she really makes a lot of public appeals saying it's not too late to do the right thing. Like, someone knows something and it's not too late to do the right thing and come forward. Saanich police maintain that the file is still open and active, and department leadership has acknowledged the toll that this is taken on the family, but also on the wider community. There's no arrests. There are no suspects named by the police, at least not released to the public. And there's no confirmation from investigators about which theory they really consider most likely. Although, like I've said multiple times, they've said on Dateline, they brought up the drug trafficking theory. I think that is still their leading theory to this day. Now, the Saanich police tip line remains open. So if you have any information about who may have killed Lindsay Buziak, or just any information about Lindsay's life or the case or whatever, even if you don't think it's important, I beg you, please call the Saanich police tip line. It is 1-888-980-1919. That's 1-888-980-1919. Now, this case has also raised some questions in the media about safety precautions in the real estate industry. I didn't look up statistics, but in my mind, I feel like the real estate industry is pretty female led. When I think of a real estate agent, I feel like it's usually a woman. So I don't know what the statistics are. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's male dominated, but I think this brings up valid safety questions. A lot of these people, these agents are going to an empty house and they're meeting strangers who can just find this online and make a call and book it. And is that necessarily safe? And here's the thing is Lindsay's murder wasn't the only violent attack on a real estate agent to make headlines in North America over the years since. But it did prompt a conversation, and there's been a slow but ongoing shift in how the industry treats solo showings. In the years since 2008, a number of U.S. and Canadian brokerages have introduced verified ID protocols requiring prospective buyers to provide identification or a pre-verified financing pre-approval before a private showing is scheduled, particularly for any vacant or high-value properties. Some offices have adopted buddy system norms for weekend or evening showings where you think maybe not a lot of people are going to be out and about in the neighborhood. And there's also been some safety apps that were built specifically for real estate agents that provide check-in tools that will ping a colleague if an agent doesn't confirm their safety within a set window. And these have become much more common than they were in 2008 because did we even have iPhones back then? I don't know. But obviously, none of that was standard practice for a junior agent working a Saturday evening showing in 2008. Lindsay's own precaution, asking her boyfriend to wait nearby, was informal, it was personal, and it was a smart move. She didn't, she was trusting her gut. She's something is a little bit off here. I need someone to I need to be extra careful. But still, it wasn't enough. And not because it was a bad instinct, but because the people who wanted to end her life had already planned around that type of precaution. But she was uneasy about that call before she ever got in her car to go. She said so out loud to at least two people who loved her, and she made a plan to address it. And the lesson isn't, she should have known better by any means. It's that, actually, I don't know what the lesson is in this case. I don't know what it is. If this is just such a tragic case in my mind, I feel obviously we can say, there need to be more precautions for real estate agents. We can say this shows you trust your gut. When you feel like something is off, it probably is. But what the big lesson is, I feel like we don't know because there's so many unanswered questions. And I always like to try and find something we can learn from these stories. But I think this is one of those stories where it's just such a tragedy, what happened here. And I just hope that this family gets answers one day. I just feel like this is such a specific type of agony to be in as a family because again, it's not like one of those cases where, someone disappears and there's no trace of them and we have no idea what happened. And that's a really particular type of agony as well, to have no options, no answers, no idea. But this one, it seems like there's so many unanswered questions, and yet at the same time, there's so many pretty plausible theories and ideas around this case that I feel like would be torturous. And while I don't know that there's a lesson, I think what I keep coming back to is it's not about the theories or the timeline or the phone records. Obviously, there's so many unanswered questions that I hope are answered one day so we can find who did this to Lindsay and get her justice. But really, I just keep coming back to this woman who everyone loved, who was so good at her job. And just the fact that there's no reason anyone could think that like someone would want Lindsay dead like this. Yet multiple people, at least two, went so out of their way to plan this horrific and heinous, very violent murder for someone like this, who just was a good person, had the rest of her life ahead of her, like successful, ambitious, kind, beautiful. I just cannot understand it. Why did someone want her dead so badly that they would put so much time and effort and work into this? Was it this drug cartel punishing her because they think she's an informant? Was it someone who knew her and it was for personal reasons? Was it someone in the Zailo family? Was it someone that we haven't even talked about because we just don't even know about it? It's not even a theory out there. It's a possibility. It could be neither of these theories. It is possible. And I just wish we had more information. But yeah, with that is the unsolved murder of Lindsay Buziak. And I hope that one day I'll be coming back to make a follow-up episode because this case is solved. I really hope so. But yeah, I think with that, court is adjourned. Thank you guys for being here.